Okay, time to do a video. Election prediction time. Now, on my Facebook page that I am locked out of, on in January of 2016, I predicted Trump would win the election. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Best prediction I ever did. I didn't get anything for it. And I'm going to do that this time. I am going to predict the president of the United States. But in order to do that, we're going to have to get some background here. Who would buy this shit? What is this? Would you buy? What is this? They got some zany products on Twitter. Let's see what I was looking for here. Okay, so imagine this. Where is this thing? I have it right here. Current research. Okay. Found this survey here, and this really exemplifies where I'm going with this. Annenberg Public Policy Center did a survey September 14th, 2023, asking people basic civics questions. Now, this is one that gets me because I go around and I can barely find anyone that can answer what the three branches of the government are. Here they're saying that only 66% can name all three branches. In my experience, that number is going to be much higher or much lower. In my experience, let's see, number of respondents who named number of branches, 66%. So it says the three branches. The 2023 survey found that 66% of U.S. adults could name all three branches of government. Okay, well, the people I interact with, which are educated people by and large, 90% of them can't do that. Okay, this is a survey. Are these people being allowed to look shit up? I don't know. Is it a paper survey? I don't know. That would be really sad if you get a paper survey and you can't name three branches of government. Uh, my experience is 9 out of 10 people can't name three branches of government. But even so, 66% of people can. That means 33% of people can't. Okay. Knowledge of First Amendment protections. You know, most people know freedom of speech. Let me blow this up. Most people know freedom of speech, freedom of religion. About half of the people understand that. Freedom of press, very few people have that, don't understand that we have freedom of the press. But what is freedom of the press? Freedom of the press is not the freedom of the New York Times to say whatever they want to say or CNN to say whatever they want to say. Freedom of the press means literally the freedom to publish. Okay, because when they wrote that back in the 1700s, what they were specifically referring to was the printing press. And the printing press had freedom to publish whatever it wants. So anybody that owned a printing press at the time, you were able to publish anything you want. Okay, that's the idea. So it's the freedom to basically write. When you go on social media, when you go on Twitter, okay, you are writing something down, you're putting it out there, you're essentially publishing something. Okay, you are covered. Now, because Twitter is a private company, they can yeet any account they want for whatever reason, right? And we've experienced that over the years. And now Elon Musk has come in and he's trying to make it better, and so far so good. I give him a B on that one. Okay, maybe a B plus. But you know, the government cannot come in and tell Twitter you have to take that, you know, post down because they're saying the N word. The government's not allowed to do that. Okay. People can sue Twitter and say you caused me emotional damage, but the government is not allowed to regulate what is published or what is said. Okay, so that's how these freedoms work. It protects you from the government and the state governments, not just the federal government, from coming in and taking those freedoms from you. So that is freedom of religion. The government, back when we had the vaccine mandates, okay, those mandates were struck where the CHS mandate was mostly upheld, but for the religious exemption. And that's because of this Second Amendment, First Amendment right here. The government couldn't tell employers and hospital systems that you have to fire somebody even if they for not taking a vaccine, even if they give a religious exemption. And that was always going to be the case. And it just astounded me going, as we went through 2020 and 2021, how many people didn't understand what freedom of religion really means. It really means that the government is not allowed to have an establishment of a religion. They're not allowed to favor one religion over another. So they can't say, for example, there was a big case back in the 70s where the people, the Santorian people down in Miami, not too far from here, were sacrificing chickens in their backyard or something. And then the city came in and said, hey, you can't do that. We're not going to allow you to sacrifice chickens. And then it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that the city of Miami or Hialeah or whatever it was had to allow those people to do their religious rituals, which includes sacrificing chickens or goats or whatever, and that the state couldn't come in and place a blanket ban. Now, they could regulate. They could say, okay, if you're going to sacrifice the chicken, now you have to do it in a clean way. You got to use sanitation. You can't just do it in the street, yada, yada, yada. That's a public health and welfare situation right there. And the states do have authority, and the federal government does have authority to regulate public health and welfare concerns, but they couldn't tell you you can't practice any religious. For example, polygamy. The government can't tell people in Utah that you can't practice polygamy. That's just, they can't do that. Okay, so it's amazing how many people don't understand these rights. Supreme Court issues. The survey asked knowledge questions and an attitude question of the Supreme Court. Approval of the Supreme Court. People tend to approve or disapprove of the Supreme Court whenever there's a big case that they like or don't like that comes through. Okay. Most Americans don't realize that most Supreme Court decisions are unanimous decisions. It's rare for there to be actually dissent in the Supreme Court. It's less common. Okay, so what's my point here? My point is, if you don't understand how your government works, and it is clear to me that most Americans do not understand the basic aspects of how the federal government works. They don't understand what the powers of the president are, which is not a question here, but it should be on there. Because how are you going to vote for a president or a congressperson when you don't know what their role within government actually is? You don't know what their job actually is. It's like, would you hire somebody? Let's say you bought an investment property. Would you then just, you haven't seen the property yet, you haven't been there yet, you don't have a clue what's going on with the property. So you just hire a random person and say, hey, go fix the house, okay? And you expect him to fix the house, not hire people. You expect him to fix the house, right? Go fix the house. But you don't know whether you need a plumber. You don't know whether you need an electrician, a roofer, a carpenter. You don't know what you actually need. You don't know what needs to be done. And it's the same thing when people go to the voting polls every year. Okay, every 4 years, every 2 years, every year, whatever. They go to the voting polls hiring somebody for a job, whether it's president or Congress. And they don't know what their job actually is. And if you think about how ridiculous it is, then the gravity of the situation we are in as a country starts to dawn on you once you see that we have a population that just goes to the voting polls every election season, and they're pulling the lever for people. They have no idea if they're qualified for this job because they don't know what the actual job is. And then what on top of that, when the candidate is campaigning on the campaign trail, that candidate can say all sorts of nonsense, and the people listening to them won't know whether it's possible or not for that, campaign promise to be fulfilled. Case in point, student loan debt relief. Now, when Biden was on the campaign trail, he promised to give student loan debt relief to everybody under a certain income. I think it was $125,000. And he said something like, I'm going to give every person who has student loan debt forgive some of their debt if they make less than a certain amount of money. Okay. The problem is this, is the president doesn't have that power, never had that power. You see, the president only has power to do what Congress, in this instance, he would only have the power to do that if Congress enacted a statute that said, yes, President, you can now forgive student loan debt for everybody that makes under $125,000. Barring that law being enacted by Congress, the president can't do it. Now, right now, he's trying to find, loopholes and different sneaky ways and all that. And some of it's going to get struck down by the Supreme Court. There's no doubt. Now, he doesn't care that these are going to get struck down by the Supreme Court. When was this one made? This article actually made. This is a fairly recent article. So, and this is probably going to be a fluff piece. So here it says, he pledged $10,000 in student debt relief for $120,000 a year. So that's what he pledged. Now, of course, we know that the Supreme Court already struck down one of his student loan debt forgiveness programs. And that's because he didn't have authorization from Congress. Congress has to get together, the House and the Senate, and they have to vote on this and then send the bill to the president's office. And then the president will then say, I approve of this, okay? And then he can start forgiving student loan debt. And, I don't care either way. I think the student loan debt was always a scam. It's another scam that the boomers have perpetrated upon the younger generation. It's literally the boomers created this student loan debt system and put all of the younger generation in debt slavery is what effectively has happened. Okay, but I would like to see the student. The student loan debt thing was a scam from the start. When the government started backing up student loan debt back in the, I think, 90s or early 2000s, at that point, you knew that the student loan debt problem was going to get out of control because now the universities, now the loan companies had carte blanche to give student loans to anybody they wanted because they knew the government was going to back up the debt. The government was going to take on the debt, and then they were going to get the money from the student or let it default one way or the other. But the loan companies, they got their money. The schools already got their money. They don't care what happens to the debt once the student takes on the debt because they know the government is going to back it up. So what did the schools do? Oh, they started raising their tuitions because they knew that the loan companies were going to give out the loans no matter what because the government was going to back it up with their infinite purse, basically. So it was going to be a problem. I remember this back in the day, and I said this is going to be an issue. And now, guess what? We have $2 trillion in student loan debt. So where I'm getting at here is the president didn't have the power to do this or anything like this as far as forgiving student loan debt. But in 2020, if you would have went to college campuses and asked students in college campuses where this shit should be fresh in their mind. You ask students, hey, do you think if Biden gets elected, do you think that you're going to get some of your debt forgiven? And most of them would have said yes. I've seen, the campus interviews where they're going around asking students these questions, and most of them said, "I'm voting for Biden because he's going to forgive my student loan debt," and that was it. End of story. None of them even thought about how does the government work? How can the president do that? Is that going to be possible? Okay. And this is the problem with our country today. And this is why we're going to continue to decline. It's not the politicians' fault. Everybody's saying, oh, the politicians suck. Well, who elects the politicians? Who believes the campaign promises of the politicians? And who fails to hold them accountable when they fuck up? Who keeps electing the same people over and over again, even when they fucking suck? Okay, it's the broader population. Okay, and the biggest problem we have today, just like what happened in Rome back in the, as the Rome started declining, actually it started, in the first century Rome. People were already talking about how, like Juvenal, the poet, said, people just want their bread in circuses. And that was the first century of Rome, when Rome was, the Roman Empire was kind of like at its apex. And people were already talking about how, the people, the citizens stopped caring about how their government was being run. And that's essentially what's happened in the United States. The people of this country have had it too good for too long. They no longer care how their country is being run. They don't care who's running it. Okay, and they don't even care to know how it's supposed to run on paper. And this is why my presidential prediction, okay, is that no matter, I can say one thing for certain. Whoever the president of the next president of the United States is going to be, I am 100% sure that he will be horrible. No doubt in my mind. We're not going to see a good president until we have a major crisis and people wake up. Until then, we're going to have one horrible president after another, because people are going to the voting polls. They don't know what they're voting for. And it gets even worse than that, because you have people like Elizabeth Warren. Okay, and I remember when she put out this tweet, and she said right here, a very, very misleading and predatory statement. She's preying on people's ignorance here. That's what kind of douchebag she is. Let's be clear. President Biden has the legal authority to cancel student debt. Republican officials need to get out of their way so Americans can get this much needed relief. And even Community Notes, which is mostly, it has to be mostly libs that run Community Notes. And even Community Notes had to correct her on that and say, no, Elizabeth Warren, the president doesn't have authority. Okay, so you're wrong. Okay. And Congress needs to pass a law to give the president the authority to cancel the student loan debt. That's how our government system is supposed to work. We have three branches of government, okay? Separation of powers, each checking the power of the other. The Supreme Court has the power to override the Senate, the Congress. The president has the power to appoint the Supreme Court. He can veto laws from Congress. Congress has the power to impeach the president, to impeach Supreme Court justices. They all keep each other in check. That's to keep power from becoming too concentrated in one branch, so we don't end up with a dictatorship. And so far, it's worked. It's worked remarkably well, actually. Maybe the founding fathers would be surprised that it worked so well. But it seems like it's starting to break down. And the reason it's breaking down is not because of bad politicians or bad bureaucrats or bad Putin or whatever. It's because people in this country are dumb and they just don't care to know how their government works. They don't want to look into the candidates they're voting for. They're simply voting for whoever looks the best and sounds the best. That's why I would say if Gavin Newsom runs, he can beat Trump. No problem. I could say that. So that would be an actual prediction. Now, if Biden stays on, I think most likely it's going to be Trump that wins. And then who knows what else can happen. They're not going to leave us alone this year. Just like in 2020, okay, they're going to pull some shenanigans. I happen to think it's going to be a cyber attack because they're kind of dropping hints. You know, Obama did the movie about a cyber attack. And then World Economic Forum is talking about a cyber attack. And we're even having, you know, Russia do cyber attacks, which may not be related. Maybe they're actually just doing it just to, you know, actually part of the war effort. But they're going to use that. They're going to use that when they orchestrate a cyber attack. When the cyber attack is orchestrated in the United States, okay, they're going to say, oh, look, the Russians were doing cyber attacks for a while. It must be the Russians. But I happen to think it's going to be a cyber attack. They're going to shut down the banks are going to get shut down. So I just don't see the establishment status quo weirdos that are running the country. They're not going to let go without a fight. It worked in 2020. Okay, a pandemic broke out, and I don't think they created the pandemic or anything like that, but the pandemic happened, and they didn't let that crisis go to waste. Okay, and they turned it into a weapon against Trump, and it worked. So they're going to try something like that again. So just get ready for that. They're going to fuck with you people. They're going to fuck with us, okay, and it's going to be fucking chaos, okay? So who knows what's going to happen. But whatever happens, one thing is for certain, is that whoever the next president is, whether it's the game show host, whether it's the demented old man, or whether it's American Psycho Gavin Newsom, who destroyed his state, whoever it is, he's going to be a fucking terrible president, and the country's going to continue to decline. And that's because this country can't be fixed until the population wakes up. I mean, we have Congress people here who are taking advantage of people's ignorance. She's going out and saying that Biden has the authority to cancel student loan debt. She knows damn well that's not the case. She knows that damn well. But she doesn't want to be responsible for it because she knows that actually it's her responsibility and the responsibility of her colleagues actually to take care of the student loan debt problem. They created the student loan debt problem. Congress enacted the law, I think it was in 2005, that created this problem in the first place by making the government responsible for student loans and creating this huge problem and letting the universities, these politicians in Congress allowed the universities to take advantage of students and raise tuitions ridiculously high, and the students took out the loans and the loans were given to them because the government backed it up. She knows all of this, but because she doesn't want to take responsibility for it, she's saying, oh yeah, the president has the authority to do it. And enough people believe her, because she can look like a clown to people. She doesn't care. As long as enough of the right people believe her, the people who are going to the voting polls, boomers who are watching her on CNN, those are the people that she wants to hear this. She wants young, impressionable college students to hear it who are desperate, or people that are really overloaded in student loan debt. She wants desperate people to hear that and believe her. That way she doesn't have to take responsibility. So it's really a very nefarious, pernicious thing she's doing here. And I didn't know she got a community note. She deserved one for that. That's a really slimy thing to say. It's really misinforming people, and she knows it. But this is the problem, is that we're not there yet. We're getting there, maybe. It's slowly but surely. But we're not quite there yet where people are actually taking the political system of this country seriously. It's just, we're not there yet. So the next president is going to be horrible. The president after that is probably going to be horrible. And that's my prediction. Whoever the next president of the United States is, he's going to be fucking horrible. I'm out.